Hello and welcome back to the Diff, where it's the final day of the 2017 Disruptive Innovation Festival. And we say that the Diff gets bigger and better every year. Well, what could be bigger and betterer than two finales in one day? So later on, you've got the Diff Grand Finale, a roundup of all the best bits from the past 3 weeks. But now we've got the finale of the inaugural Circular Design Case. So 2 weeks ago, I was sat here kicking off the Circular Design Case Award with Simon Whitmer and Alex Michelou from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And for a bit of a recap, the Circular Design Case was a chance to learn about circular design, this merging of circular economy and design thinking, and to put your skills into action, trying to redesign some everyday products, or actually the system around everyday products. And the winners have now been chosen and will be announced later. And again, another reminder, there's 3 winners who win the Circular Design Case Award, and one of those winners, one of you, could be winning £1,000 cash. So we'll be finding out a bit later on in the session who's bagged that prize, or those prizes. And as you know, if you've watched some of the Diff already, we always say we want to hear from you, but this time it's maybe something a little bit different. Instead of hearing your questions, we've got a question for you, which we're going to talk about with our guests in a moment as well. We've been talking about circular design. You've probably heard about circular design throughout the rest of the Diff. But what do you want to learn more about circular design? So as we progress with the conversation with our 2 guests today, keep that question in mind and keep sharing those thoughts in the discussion forum, which is below the video player that you're watching now, on Twitter using #ThinkDiff, or on the YouTube Live video player, again, in the comments section. And now on to our fantastic guests, joined by 2 circular design experts now. Simon Whitmer, who, as I say, you joined us to kick the case off 2 weeks ago. It says here that you're the Foundation's very own Puff Daddy, making it rain. Thousands of pounds for one lucky winner. Is that accurate, do you think?
Well, you know, compared to the millions that are given away in TV normally, it's
pretty meager.
Don't
downplay it. So I've got Simon Whitmer.
It's a start.
You're the Circular Design Lead for Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and Chris Grantham, Circular Economy Portfolio Director from IDEO.
Yes.
Happy to have you here, Chris. How was your journey over?
It was okay. It's wonderful to be here in your exotic paradise that is the Isle of Wight.
Well, we've recently even got some sort of tropical plants around you, so we're trying to convey that.
That's true. That's true.
And you joined us. You didn't come to the Diff studio last year, but this is your second Diff appearance. But
it is.
You're now in HQ, which
I was in your other studio in Holland last time. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're kind of moving around the different Diff locations. Yeah. Okay. So as I say, we're going to be talking a bit about circular design, recapping on some of the learning aspects that have been part of this circular design case. A bit later on, we're going to be talking about maybe what some of the trends, what's hot in circular design, what people might be seeing around the corner. And of course, we're going to be announcing the winners and sharing some of the finalists winning entries of the circular design case. But Simon, firstly, just for the people tuning in who might be thinking, oh no, I'm tuning in at the end here, I've missed all the good stuff. Why should they stay tuned over the next 40 minutes?
Well, you know, it's always a pleasure to have a session with you, Joe. And as I can tell from 2 weeks ago, there's always a surprise in here. So that's the session itself, and the winners will be announced. It's also like a start of a journey. So like even people who haven't been part of the case, they can still learn about circular design. They can learn about how to apply it in their context later. So the case is really just like one event, but it's the start of a longer journey of circular design.
Okay, so it's not like you give away a big comedy check at the end and then we all go home. There's more to be done.
Of course, yeah. Yeah.
And let's get into some kind of overview of the design case so far. Can you give a bit of a summary? I mean, there are lots of kind of different competitions out there. I don't think we've run one quite like this at the Diff before. So maybe you could give a bit of an overview of how it's been, what sort of activity you've seen, some first impressions.
Yeah. Yeah, for us it was really a prototype. As we often discuss in circular design, it's all about iterations, it's all about learning and prototyping. And this was the first time where we brought together a learning journey and a competition. So we thought about how can we help people learn about circular design and how can we also make it exciting with a case competition. It has been the first time. It has been a learning journey for us as well, ourselves. And it was really exciting. I mean, the enthusiasm was very strong. I saw the activity on Twitter going on with likes and tweets and retweets, and I felt that people actually grasped the essence of circular design really quickly. That was always a bit of my question, like, is circular design maybe something that people struggle with? Do they understand it? And it seemed that they got really deep into it. Like, even just with this starting point, they had so much substance, so many different things to play with, like materials, business models, technologies.
And just to remind us, you weren't actually asking someone to get some cardboard out and design a prototype or create something on some software, were you? You were asking for a more accessible, maybe a more doable starting point. It was a system diagram.
Yeah, that was also an experiment for us. It was less about the solution. It was more about what would be your question. And I think Einstein said something about, like, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I would focus something like 95% on the question. So we really wanted to focus on the question and the understanding of the systems map. So zooming out and then understanding the intervention points where people can do something about the system. Mm-hmm. And that also allows then, because then you don't need to be an expert. You don't need to be good in product design itself and making something, but it's more about systems thinking, design thinking, which we wanted to focus on.
And Chris, why do a challenge like this? Why is the doing, that getting started, even if it is doodling a diagram on the back of a napkin, why is that an important starting point rather than saying, I'm going to spend a few hours watching some videos on YouTube? Although that is good. Not playing down watching videos on YouTube. It's a really important way to learn.
I think, as Simon said, the typical design process, circular design process, starts with an exploration, and you have to kind of do that often by kind of getting your thoughts down. So it's a great, and also as Simon said, it's a great way to begin a design process by really interrogating the question you're asking. So that's a really good kind of solid kind of place to start. And I think we were just really excited to get people to think about that sort of whole system perspective, get that systems perspective. And I think once people start to get into it by, starting to kind of map out, the different parts of the system and the different kind of relationships that, that occur in a system when materials kind of flow around from kind of product to user, et cetera, et cetera. It's really inspiring to people when they can start to sort of see that really they can rethink most parts of the system, pretty much the whole system. There really is an opportunity to find a different model, and I think that's what we're trying to inspire people around, is to believe that there are alternative business models, economic models to the linear economy. So, I think what's great is get people started, start to see the connections. Once people start to see the connections, that the circular mindset starts to take hold. So they start to see all the connections in the system. They start to believe that, I can see how that bit could be redesigned if I connect it with that bit. So it's that kind of personal agency and confidence that comes through sort of starting to map the system and seeing the connections and believing that there is an alternative way we can design products and services.
And it seems that sometimes when we think about how we might design things for a circular economy, for me, for a while, my head would go to something that takes place in a lab, or maybe with some breakthrough technology or some miracle new app to help someone solve these problems. It seems like that mapping exercise almost lets you find the circular opportunities that have been kind of hiding in plain sight the whole time, that don't rely on necessarily some breakthrough innovation, but are actually a result of some systems thinking.
Exactly. I mean, the connections are all around us. We just don't see the industrial system around us. But yeah, it's about rethinking those connections, fundamentally, and that's why mapping the system, as Simon said, is such a great starting point, because then you obviously you understand the system, and then you start to see how it could be bent in different ways.
And which systems were people bending in different ways, Simon? Which sort of products did people take, or systems did they start rethinking?
This time we focus on a plastics object or plastics-related fibers. But within that, there's such a broad diversity of applications. So we saw people doing yoga pants, coffee cups, your Oyster card that you need here in the UK to tap into the tube. Then plastics packaging as one of the areas where we saw most submissions. But it was very, very diverse in the submissions, yeah.
Diverse in the... Oh, go on, Chris.
No, I was just going to say we should we've got a video to sort of play about the kind of the idea of kind of thinking more in kind of circles when you're designing sort of the system.
Yeah, let's take a look at that now.
When you design, often you are designing just like in your kind of area or for your sector. When you're thinking of like the bigger systems, how they affect each other and stuff like that, it's kind of like, okay, I may need this person to collaborate with, or I may need to go to this sector, or I may need to understand it from that perspective.
The thing about systems is ultimately they are a series of relationships, and some things you can control, some things you can't, but certain things you can definitely influence. It's really about kind of orientating yourself first and then keep zooming in and out. So keep looking at the bigger picture, what you're trying to change systemically, and then go right back into, okay, but what am I doing day to day, and how can I leverage the connections that I have or maybe can create?
Designers are working with systems all the time. They don't always realize it, but everything we do is a system. Even a simple product, imagine a cup. That cup may seem at the moment you use it, or maybe even the moment you buy it, is a pretty simple thing. But you know, but for a designer, they have to think about how it's made. And then maybe if they're being a little thoughtful about it, they might think about how long it's used and how it's used, and then ultimately maybe how it's disposed. And so that's a system, right? Now, you know, good designers know how to step backwards and forwards. Imagine kind of stepping away from the object and thinking a little bit more about the system, or even sometimes even going closer and understanding how the details of an experience work. So we're sort of used to, as designers, moving backwards and forwards between different levels of complexity. And what we're asking designers to do when we think about the circular economy is to step back a little bit further from the objects that they may be designing or the experiences they may be designing, and to think about the system that those objects or experiences are part of, and to think about how they might influence the design of that whole system through this idea of circularity.
That was Tim Brown and some of his IDEO colleagues talking about circular design, and specifically about thinking about this systems mindset. And we're here at the Circular Design Case finale at the Diff with Chris Grantham and Simon Whitmer. And a reminder to you watching online, we want to hear what you want to learn next about circular design. That's your challenge for this session, so send your comments in, and we'll take a look at those throughout the rest of the session. Now, Chris, you brought up that video. Why is that important? It's about a new way of looking at the way we make and use stuff.
Yeah, I think very simply, you know, it's important that designers can zoom in and out. So, you know, not just kind of focused on the thing they're designing, but the system it needs to sit within, and the system they need to influence in order to kind of get a circular product to market. And so it's really, I think, the systems thinking, the full systems thinking, and seeing that system as a design opportunity, and thinking about kind of what would need to be true, you know, in order for my kind of linear product to function in a different way, for it to be kind of reused or, you know, remade in some way, for example. And so that's that consideration, you know, beyond the initial traditional first use that a designer always used to think about, but to sort of the ongoing viability of that material in the economy is important.
And that's one aspect, this zooming in and out. And now that people have got started with circular design, are there other principles? I mean, this one's on the screen for us now, but there are other principles, aren't there, that people can kind of just have, maybe they have them, it's not a checklist, but the principles that they might have in mind as they start approaching these sorts of problems?
Yeah, so there are in total 4 mindsets. But just before we jump onto the second one, for us it wasn't really just a theoretical exercise as the foundation. We actually started this during the New Plastics Economy initiative, and we realized that the designers themselves, or like one individual organization, couldn't solve the challenge by themselves. They really had to partner up, and that's also when we did the workshop in the idea office as well, with the whole group of stakeholders. You need to have the whole value chain at the table, and you need to understand how you can design different parts for other stakeholders as well on the table. And for me, this was most impressive when I saw a recent project again. I mean, of course, we can change materials, we can change design formats, but what if we change design technologies? And we used, sorry, I mean not design technologies, but technologies in the design itself. And I saw this really interesting project about digital watermarks. So what if you could communicate with everybody in the value chain through the product itself? So what if it contains the information about where to dispose it, about the value that went into it, maybe even the farmer that produced the content of the packaging. So what if we make the system more intelligent, and by that overcome this issue of the linear economy? Just to mention one example of like how systems said that that's really important.
Just a quick thought on that before we move on, as we've got these kind of these headings driving our discussion, is we've started to think about beyond sort of human-centered in the circular economy, because of the emphasis on the individual as a sort of icon for design, and actually thinking more about being kind of humanity-centered, you know, and the idea that, you know, it's not about the kind of I but the kind of we, you know. So designing for the we, for us, becomes really important in the circular economy. Just to respond to that point, and how is design moving on in its thinking, or maybe even going back to what it valued in the past, perhaps. But yeah.
And I guess it's also like linking to the second point now. Viability.
Take it away.
Yeah.
You can be the man with the remote, Simon.
Cheers. This is.
No, don't change me, unfortunately.
So it's about viability, right? Viability in the sense of feasibility, viability, and desirability, and in the framework. And reimagining viability is exactly about going from the individual perspective towards a broader perspective in terms of system, but also in terms of resilience. What if our system is designed in a way that enriches everybody's, let's say profitability, but also other parts? And I think you had this beautiful metaphor with the cake.
Oh yeah, growing with a pie.
The pie, yeah.
Either, I'll accept either, or both, maybe.
I think, the pie, there's something a little bit too kind of capitalist about pies, I think. But anyway, I think the metaphor still stands. I think, I mean, there's a few things here. Designing products to work better in the wide open expanse of the circular economy, in terms of designing with materials that can be used by other stakeholders in the system for longer, designing for disassembly, for example. All these are important kind of considerations that make the materials and the products that any one individual or entity is producing more valuable potentially to that entity, but also the system. So that would be an example of thinking more about the kind of the size of the pie to grow your slice of it. And I think also working with others to think about, you know, where we have circular economy opportunities that demand new infrastructure, you know, new opportunities to create systems at scale. I think that, you know, those are often opportunities that have to be shared. You know, no one company should bear the costs of developing that, and that's where we get this first mover disadvantage. So I think one of the great things is, you know, how can we bring, one of the big questions we should be asking is, how can we bring supply chains together, for example, to think through the new system opportunities, to share the risk of developing those and implementing them, so that, you know, we can all benefit more individually from a more effective system. So that's growing the pipeline.
And that's a different mindset, isn't it? Because
totally.
People or a lot of organisations today see it the other way around. It's very competitive, lots of saturated markets. Let's close down and focus on what we know and see if we can beat the rest. So it's flipping that.
It is, yeah, and sometimes, you know, one extreme of that is open source. It may not be as extreme as that, but it's certainly thinking about how do I make how do we make these systems we're creating more usable by everyone? Because actually, a lot of the economies of scale come with scale. So you know, that's when we all start to really benefit from it. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, it's also just recognizing that we live in a very interconnected world, right? I mean, today you can't just optimize your own little small piece. That's what we again saw in the new plastics economy. Like, today, this model doesn't work. You can't continue to have these leakages into oceans. So either it's going to be all of them win, or it's going to be none, right? So it's a very strong urgency to change something about,
Let's move on to number 3, because we've also got some really good questions coming in from the audience, which I want to make sure we have some time for.
Cool. So we keep this one that case
Well,
a bit
just
shorter.
crack on.
Okay. I mean, I think what's really interesting is this idea that, you know, that the circular economy is more like a kind of organic system, like sort of at a meta level. You know, it will be building its intelligence, literally through things like the data streams, through IoT and AI that will help us build a lot more intelligence into the system. So rather like a natural system, it will evolve over time. It won't be a static system. It will grow in its ability its ability to kind of digest and process materials and do that more effectively.
Growth has come up quite a lot at the diff so far, but I do like that different interpretation about growing in the ability to do something. We're not just talking a different way of looking at growth, about growth in kind of the maturity of a system rather than just kind of measuring something like GDP.
Well, exactly. And I think the last quick thought from me is the inherent sort of concept of circularity is about something that kind of evolves because it's about learning loops. You know, it's about using these systems that we're essentially building to kind of bring back materials and reuse materials. Our systems are building insight as well. You know, we can learn about how to design more effectively. You know, we can learn about how to essentially build more value for all the kind of players in the system. So I think that's a really important idea, is that, you know, the idea we can embed intelligence into products, and into the systems within the economy to, you know, make it something that grows and learns and is more effective over time.
Good. Shall we?
Let's keep going.
Go for our last one. Building a strong narrative, and that's something that I've learned, especially through the project, and in the first phase when we went to our research trip as well and spoke to different designers.
What are you talking about here? Research trip about which project?
So when we started building on the new plastics economy and identifying the need to help designers to design for the circular economy, we spoke to many people in the design community. We spoke to also to one farmer of a vineyard. So we went really broad, really to the extremes.
Oh yeah, see why this is memorable.
Yes, I was going to say, slightly foggy memory that day.
That was first I thought, like, how is it related to what we do, right? I mean, why would we go and speak to this vineyard? But it's really interesting. They shifted from a very linear model of like just using more fertilizers and squeezing out more of the wines to a more resilient system that also used apple trees and other plants. So they had like more bugs that fighted the things that were bad
more
for the wines.
More diverse system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And well, in the short term, profits went down. So in the short term, well, no more fertilizer. There were some issues. And the employees said, like, you know, I mean, why do we have to do this? You know, does it make any sense? And the visionary designer had to use a narrative. He had to use a strong story to talk about why it's important to have a resilient system. And then a couple of years later, they really turned it around. They are now much more profitable, and not only because of the wine, but because of other new revenue streams, like from honey, from the bees. Then you have products like olive oil as well. There you have apples. So it's a more resilient system, and you can't anticipate these revenue streams when you embark on the journey. So often we as designers, we have to convince people that there are more opportunities and that the resilient system will be more profitable in the long term. And this requires a very strong narrative. That's just one example of how you need to be a storyteller when you're a circular designer.
Great, lovely. So those are the four main principles or mindsets that you've kind of established, and people can find those in the Circular Design Guide. Which do you want to just say a little bit about what that is if people haven't used it yet?
Yeah. So the Circular Design Guide is a practical tool that anybody can use. It's free online. It's developed by IDEO and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. You can find it on circulardesignguide.com, and inspirations and has mindsets that help you to design for the new reality that we live in, this interconnected reality. And it has 24 methods, so you can just click on a method and learn to apply it, for example, on storytelling or circular business models. And many more resources that you can check out.
In fact, one of the things we want to build in over the coming couple of months is some new workshop packages. So I'm excited that we'll be able to do that because they've been really useful, I think, for helping people learn and practice the circular economy. So,
Okay, a few questions coming in from the audience. Genghis on the ThinkDiff website says, what advice does Chris have for those of us who want to design for environmental good but work for large organisations where others higher up the food chain make the decisions?
Corporate entrepreneurship, I guess.
That's right, yes.
Well, I think you need to find some soulmates. It can be a very lonely place. I think it's about building a movement, inspiring people with what you've seen. And I think it's also about painting the picture of why that approach to your business strategy and innovation provides more competitive advantage for the business. So that's fundamentally, what will open some doors. But, at the end of the day, nobody wants to go to their deathbed thinking they've left the world in a worse place than they found it. So I think you need to pull on some different levers in the storytelling that Simon was talking about. You need a strong business case. You need to talk to the purpose that I think we all, in our heart of hearts, have, and kind of help that come to the surface as well.
Thank you. And next up from Twisted Mind. Some great names.
I don't think I want to know what this question is.
Let's have a listen. There are so many design frameworks. Why should designers adopt the circular economy framework instead of, say, Cradle to Cradle or Dieter Rams' Good Design Guide or the scores of others?
I think
is it mutually exclusive?
No, no, absolutely not. I think it builds on many of these elements. In fact, we have worked very closely with Cradle to Cradle on the guide itself, and we are very closely connected to Cradle to Cradle. We also looked at the 10 principles of Dieter Rams in the inspiration phase, and we found them very valuable and helpful. So I do think that these inspirations, they are like lenses, right? So every inspiration and every principle or framework is a new lens. And what we wanted to provide with this is a lens for the circular economy. So how can you take these specific mindsets and then be better equipped for the circular economy, which was our main purpose with this guide.
So I hope that's answered Twisted Mind's question, or that maybe they've got some even more twisted ones to come our way in the next few minutes. Do keep sending your questions in. We'll get to some more of them in a few minutes. But now, I wanted to. Well, we're going to talk about the winners and the finalists of the design case in a few moments. But I wanted to put both of you to the test.
Oh gosh!
In this challenge, the DIF attendees have been put to the test. You're not getting off scot-free. So you spend your lives, or part of it, with your ear to the ground, seeing the latest circular economy startups that might be poised to completely disrupt an industry or change the way we do things. So I'm going to see if you've really got your finger on the pulse in a game that I've called Startup or Made Up.
Sounds quite intimidating.
Gosh, I think that theme tune was maybe not meant to sound quite that intimidating, but we did leave DIF lead Emma Fromberg alone with a microphone for about 10 minutes.
Very dangerous.
That was Emma?
I'm afraid it was.
Oh,
yeah, you can take that up with her afterwards. Okay. So it's a very simple game. I've got a number of different startups coming up, and you need to tell me whether you think they're a startup or they're just made up.
Right. I think viewers should know this is actually, we genuinely don't know what's about to come.
You genuinely don't. And then
can we win anything?
You can't win anything, Simon, sorry. Oh, you're just dishing out the money today. Man, all right? Then some of them might be related to circular economy, or if even my made-up ones, there might be some great ideas in there that you can pinch. I'll give them away for free. OK, so first up, Fat Llama. Hire out your Hoover, microwave, or even your sofa for cash. Fat Llama, do you reckon it's a startup, or do you think it's just made up?
You see, the llama, in a way, I mean, it doesn't see the connection at all.
No,
right?
I think it's...
So I don't think you can
Sorry,
make
are
it
you
up.
saying that if it said hire out your fat llama?
Yeah, your animal.
Then you would-
Yeah, hire out
that
your
would
animal.
make
then
more
it-
sense.
then
Make a bit
then-
more.
Then
Yeah.
it would make sense.
All
and,
right.
and then I think you would have made it up.
Let's have an answer from both of you then. Come on.
I think
is
it's made
true.
up. It's made up.
This is true.
I think so.
Oh, you think it's
you,
true?
you wouldn't make up like fat llama and then like
Okay,
something like
so you're going true and false.
Yeah.
It's real.
Oh
Fat
my
llama,
gosh.
a real startup.
It's a terrible naming example.
Well, we've given some feedback on that. I hope they're watching. Okay, next up, Share My Sausage.
Oh, this has got to be real.
It's a community meal sharing platform. It's kicked off in Berlin, Frankfurt, and Dusseldorf.
But why would you share a sausage?
Well, I think maybe it's just kind of.
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you, Simon?
You can probably share other things. It's not just sausages.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No,
but
no,
what do you think?
you
Real or
made
fake?
this up. You have this strange.
Startup or
I
made
think
up?
real.
It's made up. You have this strange humor, Joe.
It's fake.
Oh,
that
yeah.
is made up. Chris liked it though.
Well, it just sounded quite German, but yeah.
Next up, Bike Curious. It's bike sharing meets Tinder.
Bike shape.
Oh, I like the idea.
That's really smart. Someone can make a lot of money
What
from
do
it.
you
Well,
think?
it's kind of circular bike sharing stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And Tinder, yeah.
I like. Is this for criminals or is it for?
What do you think? Bike
well,
Curious.
this is a tough one.
I think it's real.
Okay. Simon?
I don't think it exists yet. I would have heard it, I think.
All right. Simon reckons he'd have heard of it if it was
Ear
existed.
to the ground.
It's fake. It's fake.
I'm so
You
gullible.
are.
I haven't
You're
won
getting
a single
taken.
point
I've got
yet.
you on a piece of string, Chris. This one is fake. I don't know how it would work. Maybe they deliberately overbook the bikes and then you'd meet and you'd have to figure out. Or maybe it's for tandems. That's a good idea.
Oh, that will,
We're going to work on this afterwards.
don't tell the audience.
Next up,
should really-
fascism.
Oh,
Get fashion advice online, powered by the crowd.
this is bad.
Fashion advice online. Powered.
What do you think? Is it startup?
Sounds too simplistic. I'm going to say it's fake.
Okay.
Yeah, fake.
Both gone fake. We've got a unanimous decision. That is unfortunately
Oh, God.
completely
Really?
real. Fascism. I don't know if it's going now because they think that shortly after launch they realised the name was a bit of a misstep.
Yeah.
Kind of fascism and an online voting system didn't really work out.
Yeah.
Anyway, next up, we've only got a few left.
Oh, I need to score a
You
point.
need to score some points, Chris. Femur. Leather made from fish skin.
You know what? I think I saw
Is that
this one.
leather?
I saw one in London where they take fish skin and they make like chairs and
Right.
stuff. This one must be, I mean, I don't know the name, but I guess the fish skin stuff,
You reckon?
yeah, real.
What do you reckon, Chris?
I'm going to go real, actually.
I think that was a safe bet.
Yeah.
Real. Yeah, leather made from fish skin, making products that you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
With
that's an idea that could scale.
Yeah.
With an odour that in 200 years will finally go. So
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Okay. Bricking.it. It's a digital neighbourhood hub for building and DIY resources. Bricking it.
I thought this might be one of your biocycle innovations here, but no. The digital neighbourhood for building and DIY resources.
I'm just trying to figure out your psychology, like your thinking process, Joe.
What do you think? Bricking it.
I don't think you made this up. This is real.
You think
I
that's
think this is real.
both real?
I hope it's real.
Sorry, boys.
Oh,
It's
no.
a big fake.
Someone do this business.
Someone
It
should
needs to
do
be
that.
done.
Another quality name, just from
Wow.
the mind of Mr. Isles here. Okay, Loop Rocks, a platform to enable the reuse of rocks.
It's ridiculous. That's got to be
That's fake.
fake.
Yeah, it must be fake.
Come on, boys, that's completely real. I mean,
Wait.
I've used a bit of artistic license there.
Yeah.
It is rock, like an earth. So if you've got a lot of earth that you need shifting, Loop Rocks is a platform. They'll redistribute it to someone else in need of rocks.
I think it's the way you're describing these. Maybe that.
Come on.
You
All
can,
right.
you can really loop anything.
Last
yeah?
one.
Yeah.
Toy Bee, fertilizer made from ash mixed with human excrement.
Sounds
What do you
effective.
think, boys?
Yeah, I think that's.
I think that's real. That's real.
Yeah.
Again, someone should do this.
Toy bees.
Well, Chris, you'll be pleased to know that someone has done it. That person was Kim Jong-il, and this was
Whoa, no.
a pretty desperate initiative, I think, in the 90s to get a bit of sort of biocycle going in North Korea. Right. So a great case study if you want to check it out.
Well, when you can create your own regulations, you know.
So there you go. Not quite a startup, but a pretty exciting project nonetheless.
Our next research trip, Chris.
Well, that'd be interesting. I've always wanted to go. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for playing Startup on Made Up. Cool. Simon, you were less bad than Chris at that, but maybe we've got some good startup ideas out of that. Okay, so let's move on from some silliness to some seriousness, and move on to talk about the winners of the circular design case. So.
Yeah. First,
Simon, you wanted to make a little.
Yeah, I really want to say a big thank you to the players of the People's Postcode Lottery. It made a huge difference. Over the last year we have worked on engaging designers towards the new plastics economy. And without the support we wouldn't be here. So I want to just say a big thank you for their support.
Fantastic. Okay, so it's the moment that people have been waiting for. We've drawn them along long enough. Let's talk about some of the actual entries themselves. And you have some that you want to share with us. Have you just brought along the three finalists?
That's true, the three winners of the certificate, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe before we get into that, what have you liked overall about the entries? If you could kind of sum up overall what you've been impressed by.
So I already mentioned a couple of things, like I mean the whole enthusiasm and the interactivity between the submissions as well. There was commenting going on, retweeting going on.
Okay.
So there was really activity there. Then the diversity both of the ideas, but also geographies. So we have people like from everywhere, from Europe, North America, but also from other countries, at least judging from the names. It seemed to be very diverse, and the solutions also were in different contexts, not just like in a Western European country, but also in the context of waste picking, for example. So that's one thing I really liked a lot about it.
I love the fact that so many of the ideas, the many different dimensions people thought of, which is so important in thinking about how do these circular systems become more viable, how do we start to change linear systems. So lots of people thinking at once about elements of business model, thinking of shifting from product to service, looking at the material loops, getting more, from what you're kind of making and producing, and thinking differently about how you might sell it. So, and that kind of waste as resource picture. I think so. That was really impressive because people didn't have there wasn't a lot of detail they could go into, but they were very multi-dimensional. The answers, which is great.
And people can check out all the entries online.
Yeah, exactly. So the good news is that it was all on Twitter, so everybody can participate and also see the submissions. You can just type in circular design case as a hashtag, and then you see all the submissions and the tweets. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so circular design case on hashtag circular design case on Twitter to see all of the entries. And Simon, let's go for it. Let's take us through some of your three top submissions.
Perfect. Yeah, let's do that. All right. So,
should we have had a drum roll there? I mean,
it's a bit delayed.
There we go. Delayed drum roll.
Yeah.
Here's number 3.
We took the 6 judging criteria, as you might have seen them in the learning journey itself. And we went through all the submissions and rated them across the 6 criteria. And all of the 3 winners, they were really strong on the question, which we said is one important ingredient. What about Oda's submission was really powerful, in my view, is the understanding of the system, the clarity of the stakeholders, and their and the relationships between them, as well as the opportunities. So I really felt that the clarity of the stakeholder mapping as well as the visual was very strong in this case. And also like the systems view. That's something that we discussed also.
Some great questions there about how the system could be, how it might change, and identifying some of the points that might need to change.
So we're talking about a plastic bottle, a festival redesigning plastic bottle material flow and creating a circular system. So some highlights across there. go on.
What we really liked as well about the way they phrased the question is obviously reflects how Oda had been thinking, which is, how do even though this might seem a relatively small use case in scale, what's clever is it still represents a sort of a whole system. So the question implies then if you understand a system at a small scale, but nevertheless at a complete scale, it gives you potentially more opportunity to scale it more widely.
And is the festival kind of location, do you think that helps there, that it's kind of, it almost gives it as kind of microcosm?
It is a microcosm, yeah. It's got all the elements that you might find in like a larger system like a city. So I think it's a really smart way to process up your thinking. So,
yeah. Okay, so Oda Landsman wins third place circular design case.
Yeah, so we do feel that that all three are winners of the certificate. So we definitely see all three as winners.
Yanis, watching online, says, do the winners win an actual case? I'm not sure if Yanis thinks maybe it's a case of beer or something like that.
Yeah, well, the wording case it might be slightly misleading. It's about a case
award.
Study. Exactly, it's an award. It's a certificate that you get, and a recognition that also shows that you did really well in this case. And I hope this will also prove useful for you, especially those of you who are students. Yeah.
Okay, so third place Oda, second place, drum roll, please.
Oh, that was too quick. Next time I'll time it better. Sorry, guys, I was too quick.
If we botch the drum roll for the first prize, then there's going to be trouble. Okay, so you got. Is this a three-person team?
Exactly.
It's collaborative. And we love the simplicity of the diagram here. I mean, obviously things can be oversimplified, but actually here we found it really helpful, color coding different levels within the system, so that it's really easy to sort of understand the material flows at different points, who the stakeholders are, and that we like that. We like the kind of the clarity there. And I think we also thought there was a lot of merit in the question that they focused on. So bringing in the dimension of design of the toothbrush, the modular design components that would enable it to be disassembled more easily, therefore more reusable in a reuse system or recycling system. And then the natural materials we thought was an interesting kind of provocation here as well.
What are the different colours on the diagrams? Is it the blue is the kind of stakeholder, blue and green are stakeholders, and then the red is opportunities.
Exactly. Three layers of stakeholders in this case.
Okay.
And then another color for opportunities. Of course, there's like not one right and wrong way to do it, but this one is a very intuitive map to read, and also the opportunities are very clear and easily identifiable in the systems map itself, which I think is quite strong as well.
Yeah, and they pick up different opportunities. So we mentioned the natural materials, so the kind of return to nature, so that beautiful loop there. But then also looking at how maybe the might say reduce energy consumption by having these naturally toothbrushes made with natural materials last longer. So there's less kind of churn. But then also thinking about how might this work in terms of the supply chain. So we thought there was some good diversity in the thinking there.
So Ambra, Joseph and Kenneth, second place winners of the circular design case with their toothbrush system map. And now, drum roll, please, for the first prize winner of £1,000 and the circular design case award, Rob Thompson. Talk us through this one, guys.
Exactly. So Rob's submission, I think, strong across all 6 dimensions. Really clear systems map. It's intuitive to see, and it's also actually interesting to see it across all 3 submissions that you can use different ways of visualizing. Mm-hmm. So this is hand drawn, so you don't need to have a fancy designer software.
Sharpie.
Exactly. All you need is a pen and a paper. The circular opportunities. Very interesting across the whole map, so different kinds of opportunities.
And it's just to clarify, it's single-use plastic packaging for ready meals is the item that's been rethought here.
Exactly. So how might we provide time and budget-constrained consumers the convenience of ready-made meals? So what is the need? The convenience of ready-made meals without relying on single-use plastics packaging. A very simple but specific and action-oriented question. That was one of the
Great question, wasn't
Yeah,
it? Really
exactly.
great. We love that, and we love the fact that I think perhaps more than anybody else, a really important dimension that this idea touches on is the importance of designing for people's needs, and which might include something like convenience. So they really acknowledge that in the question. Circular ideas should, at the end of the day, be providing circular experiences, products, services, better experiences, should provide better experiences. If they're not, we're all doomed. So that's important. We like the fact that there was different dimensions to the answer here. So whether it's packaging as a service, for example, so taking back the packaging, the fact that there was almost a social dimension as well, looking at how people within the community could be kind of making these meals as part of the system. Thinking about the infrastructure that might be needed. So we thought there was a lot of magic in here. We felt this was high on magic, both in terms of how it engaged us in the way it was kind of like this kind of felt handcrafted as an idea, which we really liked because it was very clear and there was lots of juiciness to the thinking.
High on magic, I like that.
Yeah.
And as you say, it doesn't. It seems quite practical in that it'd be too easy to say, look, in the future we shouldn't have ready meals that come in packaging because we should all be growing things on our window ledge and eating that.
Probably should, but we're not going to, are we?
Exactly. So it's acknowledging that convenience and I guess something that consumers have got used to, a convenience that they've got used to and enjoy, and thinking within those constraints. So I can see how that one resonated. Okay, so those are our three winners, and congratulations. I hope our three winners are watching the finale now.
Well done.
And if so,
congratulations.
Huge congratulations from Simon and Chris and from the whole Diff team. And what happens next, Simon? Do they get a big paper check in the post? How are you going to...
Brown paper bag?
So we'll reach out to all three winners, or in the second instance, like more than one. We'll get in contact with them, share with them the certificate and also the money prize with Rob. So we'll get in contact in the next hours or days. And I think this is just one part, and we really sat down 4 hours. Going through every submission in detail. They were so good. It was really hard to make a selection. We had long discussions around the criteria, and what this shows me is that there's a lot of substance, and I think this also means that this substance can be taken forward and can lead to new innovations and creations. So I would say this is a start for everybody. I welcome everybody in the circular design community as well on LinkedIn, where you can bounce your ideas, where you can get feedback, where you hear the latest news. So both the participants can join the LinkedIn group, but also all the other listeners of this live session. I think we do have an image here. So on the live session page, it's very simple. Just click on join us on LinkedIn and join the other members and start your journey.
So there's 7,000-8,000 people in that community, all talking about circular design.
Exactly, it's all about the circular design and circular design guide.
Yeah, there's many different voices, aren't there? Both in terms of people trying to use it, but also experts, and there's it's a very diverse community. The community on watching this session is also pretty vibrant. We've got some great questions in, and comments responding to what people want to learn here next about circular design. Things like how we evaluate the trade-off needed as we design circular against current linear design, perhaps if there's any. Understanding the drivers and enablers needed in the system and the people who push the buttons and collaborating with them. And then, does circular design require evolution or revolution? That's from Katsi. What's the difference when it comes to mainstreaming the idea? And some comments on your outfits, which is fantastic. Simon merges with the sofa, which is apparently.
Oh yeah,
you might just look like a floating head, Simon. And
chameleon.
Chris has coordinated with the plant on the table, so some delighted viewers there. So lots of questions coming in, and perhaps we can get to them in the comment box after the session. But can you guys tell me and the audience what's maybe what's around the corner, what's next in circular design? Maybe if it's kind of practical or projects aspect, or maybe some big themes that you're seeing emerge.
Yeah. So I mean, one thing is that the guide is a living tool or website, so it's constantly evolving. And one of the iterations that we're going to do to it is to add the workshop packages. So if you're a student or if you're a designer in a company or in a hub, maybe you can find those workshop packages. You can sit together with your friends and your co-designers and have everything prepared, a whole package of doing circular design.
And your learning journey package.
Exactly. So we'll also take the learning journey from this case, so the slides on how to learn about circular design, and make that available. I mean, we are actually thinking about how we can make the whole case here replicable, so how we can make it freely accessible to people. So let's say you're an excited circular designer in a university and you want to do that, such a case. How can we make these resources available to you so that you can run it in the future? So we're thinking about all these things, and the guide will continuously evolve. The latest news are on LinkedIn, and there's going to be a circular materials winner very soon. So as maybe some of you have already, some of our audience has already seen, IDEO, OpenIDEO, and EMF have done an innovation prize, a $2 million innovation prize, and the first batch of the circular designers have been awarded.
And we had a few of them speaking at the DIF, which was good to see.
Exactly. But now it's about the materials, so material innovation, which is really important as well for the circular economy. So a lot of like activity happening, and I think Chris, you also have one thing around.
Yeah, I mean, we're focusing a lot on working with businesses. I mean, the question that came in before around the kind of corporate dimension, I think it's really important to establish the value of the circular economy as something that can drive competitiveness, that's something that can drive creative advantage. And I think that, talking about how, we're helping businesses capture more value by kind of recovering the value of their investments in materials is really, really important. Bringing users into loops with brands has huge, commercial value. I think, there are transitions that businesses are on anyway because of the technologies that are changing the way we're doing business. And I think circular economy can be a great exemplar of that kind of transition businesses need to make from being very sort of optimized in terms of sort of linear efficiency to being more kind of adaptive businesses, from being very siloed to being much more kind of collaborative. I think from kind of profit to profit and purpose, and sort of activating that purpose through a circular economy initiative, and that shift from product to service. There are many of the circular innovations that are needed are kind of service orientated, and so it can be a great learn by doing experience for the organisation that is already on a journey from being very product centric organisation to thinking beyond product, and there are many organisations in that place. So I think that making that case is getting stronger, and we need to continue to do that. I think the last thing I'll just touch on quickly is, next year IDEO and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation are going to be launching a collaborative design initiative called Collab X. And that'll be focused on the circular economy, obviously. I think we're excited to think that at that sort of intersection of different design disciplines, different organisations, technologies, data, designing with data. At those intersections, there are some incredible opportunities for circular economy innovation. So we'll be really thinking about how do we prototype these new products, service systems. Prototype scaling conditions, think about how if we convene people with enough influence, enough shared purpose, and are positioned across supply chains, we can create real change and create that sort of fear of missing out, that sense of where industry's moving, because we really want to convene some of the biggest names in industry to do this. So that's an exciting thing that'll be happening next year in the
Collab
spring.
X sounds pretty mysterious. How can people find out where will they find the latest?
We'll be making announcements sort of in due course over the coming months, but it's going to happen. We're super excited about it, and we think it'll really unlock some new opportunities.
Great. Well, thank you both of you for joining us on the DIF sofa today. Are you sticking around for the finale?
Of course,
later on?
Of course, yeah.
Maybe.
You're gonna be here
I shall be watching and heckling.
Well, Chris has got his eye on a cheeky cocktail at the finale, I think. So the next big thing in design is circular, and perhaps you already knew that, or you've discovered that through the circular design case here at the Disruptive Innovation Festival. Thank you very much for joining us for this session, and another huge congratulations to the 3 winners of the inaugural Circular Design Case Award. Do keep it locked on the Diff for the rest of the day. This final day at the Diff 2017, we've got our big variety show finale later on today, 5 o'clock here in the Diff studio, to close out this year's festival. But for now, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.